I no longer believe that power escalation is inherently a bad thing, and now believe that it all comes down to how it is executed. I'll split escalation into two types. Type 1 is improving what is already had. This refers to increasing the effectiveness of skills that a character already is capable of doing. Type 2 is approaching the ceiling. This refers to acquiring new powers and abilities. When I mention escalation, I am talking about individual power escalation, a character moving from their introductory skills and capabilities to an advanced one. A character displaying superhuman speed for the first time that they fight does not necessarily count as escalation, because we knew nothing about their speed beforehand. But a lot of these rules still applies to new characters that raise the power ceiling. The first thing that escalation needs to be is predictable. I'll use sports anime and manga as an example. In a sports manga, we have a certain expectation for types 1 and 2 based on real athletes. We roughly know the upper limits an athlete can reach in terms of speed and strength. We have an idea of how many techniques and strategies that they can learn, and we have an idea of how much they can improve one skill. We also have a general idea of the skill ceiling or game IQ for the different technical areas of the sport. We know the rules of the sport and how it's played, therefore we know almost every possible way a character can escalate for type 2 escalations. Good sports stories may push it a little, but not too much. For example, in Haikyuu, when Hinata in the final match is able to recover like a libero, set, serve, and more, it is predictable because we know the rules and how the sport is played. We are aware that all these actions can be performed by any player, and that it just takes practice and time. When it comes to fantasy, there are more requirements. The first is that it should be foreshadowed. In fantasy, we apply what humans are capable of as the physical ceiling until shown otherwise. Fantasy stories need to set the skill ceiling for both types by showing off early examples. For type 1, physical abilities that are superhuman need to be foreshadowed. For example, if a character will eventually gain super speed, strength, or durability, another character should be shown doing this early on. We need a ceiling for how strong the character can get ahead of time. This ceiling can later be broken, but again, it should be before the target character reaches that point. However, how much a magical ability can be improved doesn't need to be foreshadowed in most cases, because the possibilities could be endless. Type 2 is mostly centered around skills and magical abilities. For magical capabilities that are applicable to multiple characters, another character should show it off before the escalating character reaches it. For hidden or unique abilities, they should be hinted at a good amount of time before their usage. For example, if a character in Naruto escalated by learning all 5 elements, it would be done well, because we have already seen characters like Kakashi and Hiruzen use multiple elements early on. Likewise, if a character in Bleach escalated by learning Shikai, Bankai, Kido, Ho-Ho, or Hakuda, it would be done well, because we have seen characters use each of these, and even some that use multiple. And if a character in Jujutsu Kaisen escalates by learning domain expansion, or becoming physically superhuman, it would be done well, because domain expansion is a universal technique shown by many pros, and characters like Yuji and Todo show superhuman physicality early on. Additionally, the Kyuubi and Sukuna living inside their respective protagonists is established as early as the first chapters, so their unique abilities that will become a form of power escalation have been foreshadowed. The next requirement, which is also necessary in a power system in general, is weaknesses. What makes a power system interesting is its weaknesses, drawbacks, and limitations. If a character's power has no weaknesses to be targeted, the character becomes broken and the author is forced to make something convoluted to stop them. Type 2 escalation doesn't require any drawbacks because there's usually a ceiling in place. For example, there are only 5 base elements, and for Shinigami, there is nothing higher than Bankai. For Type 1, escalation should preferably branch out rather than go straight up. For example, Rasengan escalates by getting stronger and bigger. This is a bad form of escalation and creates a problem that I'll discuss later. Chidori, on the other hand, branches out into different uses for various situations like Senbon, Stream, and Spear. Characters getting physically stronger, faster, and more durable, and attacks getting bigger and stronger are bad forms of power escalation. Earlier, I mentioned how physical ceilings for Type 1 need to be established because of our understanding of human capabilities. With magic, there is no understanding we have outside of the author's writing. A Rasengan can keep getting bigger and stronger and we can't really say, that doesn't make sense. When escalating straight up, there are usually no weaknesses. When Naruto has giant Rasengan, he has no reason to use a regular one. It might take more chakra, but the amount of chakra is controlled by the author and has never been shown to be an issue in the story. When branching out, there are inherent weaknesses to those branches. Phoenix Flower Jutsu has more shots and range than Fireball Jutsu. but it's not as big or strong. Chidori's stream has an area of effect damage, but it doesn't have the piercing power or precision as the regular Chidori. Type 1 shouldn't escalate straight up unless there are drawbacks that come with it. Kaioken is a great example. Goku's physical prowess and magical attacks escalate up, but at the cost of his physical health. This cost is usually shown and plays a role in his fights whenever the move is used. If Type 1 increasing upward is done like this, then it has a similar effect as branching out. Something is gained, but something is lost as well. One form isn't superior to the other. The last requirement is time. The amount of time it takes to acquire these abilities has to be spaced out and believable. This leads me into power-ups. When I say power-up, I am mostly referring to Type 2 magical abilities that are game changers, like a transformation or a new technique that greatly enhances the character's combat. A lot of this relates back to what I've said about power escalation. When planning a power-up, the author should introduce or hint at the power a while before it is used. It shouldn't be introduced late. The character should be shown training for it or receiving it ahead of time. The actual power-up does not need to be shown. The character with the power-up can also be implied to have gained this power through another character ahead of time, rather than shown training for it. I'll go over examples of good ones and bad ones. Naruto's Nine Tails chakra is a good one, as it is mentioned earlier. Kurama being sealed within Naruto is established in the first pages of chapter 1, and he uses it much later. The same goes for Bankai and Shikai in Bleach. Shikai is first shown by Renji before the Soul Society arc, and Bankai is stated to be achieved by most captains. Sasuke's Curse Seal is another good one. We see Sasuke get it from Orochimaru and he uses it later. Uryu's Ginrei Kojaku is also good. We knew he lost his powers after the Soul Society arc, and we see him training to regain them. While we didn't expect a different bow with new powers, we knew that he had gained some kind of powers, which is good enough. Renji's second Bankai and Ichigo's final Shikai and Bankai are also good power-ups. We are told early on in the final arc that the two aren't using their true powers. We also see them train for their powers, and the actual power isn't revealed until later. Finally, Haki in One Piece is a good power-up. We see quite a few characters use it ahead of time. We see the main characters train during time skip, and after the time skip, they can use it. For bad examples, the Enies Lobby power-ups aren't done well. While they are cool, we never see the characters train for them, and it is never hinted ahead of time that they had these powers. Additionally, I'm not even sure when they would have had the time to gain these powers. Naruto's Caped Chakra form is also a bad power-up. Naruto gains this power out of nowhere. There is no foreshadowing or training. Chad's left arm is another power-up done poorly, because like the rest, it isn't received or trained for ahead of time. It just suddenly appears. Finally, Ichigo's Mugetsu is a power-up poorly done. While it is explained and we do see him train for it, there is not enough time between its setup and its usage. It feels like the author just came up with it at the last second. In conclusion, power escalation is done well when it is predictable, foreshadowed, has risks and rewards, and is given enough time to happen. The risk can outweigh the reward, but the reward should not outweigh the risk. Power-ups are done well when they are set up through hinting, mentioning, or showing the power-up gained or trained for a good amount of time before it is used.